All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this segment of Tech Beat. Super appreciate you joining myself and my esteemed guest, Peter Bookman, who I'll bring up here in a moment. Before I do that, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Just want to remind everybody that Peter and I will be taking questions kind of throughout the next hour. And at the end of the hour, we'll do an open QA session. Make sure to post your comments and questions in whatever platform you're joining us from, and we will keep an eye on those, try to get to them throughout the hour here. My name is Earl Foote, by the way. I'm founder CEO of Nexus IT Consultants. Nexus IT is a white-gloved outsourced IT and cybersecurity firm based here in northern Utah and servicing a nationwide footprint. Quickly, just want to mention that keep an eye out for some upcoming segments here of Tech Beat. We've got Josh Pitts, CEO of Shred Media, Shar Ignacio from Hire CXO Pro, Rob Harder, the Executive Director of the Christian Center Park City, and Danny Tony from Tony Co., who will all be joining me in the next couple of months. And there's more coming after that, next year. So we got a lot of good, a lot of good leaders lined up here that are going to be joining us here on the podcast and, sharing their journeys, sharing their thoughts, sharing their formulas for success. So let's get to the man of the hour, my friend, Peter Bookman. Want to give you an official intro to Peter, and then we'll get down to some less official conversation. But so Peter has spent more than 25 years leading teams and disrupting markets with numerous exits. In 2001, Peter's team sold Phobos to SonicWall, which is now Dell, for $321 million. In 2014, Fusion.io was taken public by Peter and his team on the NASDAQ for $2.4 billion and later sold to Sandisk. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with my my pronunciation today. Must be the allergies. In 2015, Peter sold V3 Systems to Sphere 3D, which was later taken public on the NASDAQ. Peter has deep experience in software and technology engineering and is credited as an inventor in 14 patents in both software and hardware IP. Peter's current venture is headquartered here in Salt Lake City, Utah, called guardDog.ai, which has developed a cloud-based software service with a companion device that works together to simplify network security. The solution exposes invisible threats on networks and the devices attached to them with patented technology to address and prevent cybersecurity threats before they compromise network environments. Every business, government, healthcare institution, home consumer, or other organization are grappling to find security solutions that are adapting to this changing world. guardDog.ai is pioneering new innovations designed to meet these challenges. So welcome to my guest of the hour, Peter Bookman, founder, CEO of guardDog.ai. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Earl. I almost feel like, well, I'm just humbled all around. I love how it all leads up to here. I love all the leaders you mentioned are coming. It's a great experience to be here and spend time. And I always enjoy conversating with you, and you're a wonderful conversation and brings so much to the community. And this podcast brings so much to the community of entrepreneurs and those who want to learn great tricks and lessons. It's great life hacks. I hope I can add to that today.
You're going to do a fantastic job. I know this is going to be super valuable. So, Peter's a guy after my own heart. When I'm not in the office and dressed up and have a sports coat on, I almost always wear a pork pie fedora. Yeah, beautiful hat. I love it. I don't have a lot left up here anymore. So, during the week I try to do something with it, but there you go. I'm about to just throw in the towel and, go Chrome Dome, and just wear a fedora all the time. But
I'm a fan. I pictured Les going a little Lex Luthor, but as it turns out, there's so many hats to go through, instead of going the wig route or just trying the hairstyle thing, like you say, the fedora amongst others, ball cap forward, ball cap back, sideways, flat, there's so
Yeah.
many options. So for those of
Right.
us who are there, it's a great style. So yeah, and
Yeah.
we were talking earlier. I love the use of the beard. I'm about to have my winter time thing, but being well groomed, it's nice to be able to show our faces. To be able to enjoy and present ourselves however we want. And yeah, we are cut from the same cloth. I love it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So Peter and I have actually known each other for a long time, 25-ish plus years.
Mhm.
We've known each other through a family connection, and it's been fun to connect with him here and there throughout the years and kind of follow his journey and learn from him along the way. So and Peter, by the way, his company guardDog is blowing up. He's traveling all over the world right now, meeting with partners and investors and growing his team. And so he's back on the East Coast right now, sitting in the beautiful woods. We're hoping the connectivity, stays solid. But I'm thank you so much for joining me, here, Peter, this afternoon. And I know you're busy. I know that you're scaling, like crazy. I know because we're helping on the back end with that a little bit.
Yeah, you are. Thank you.
And yeah, well, I mean,
I'm reminded
it's a
of,
privilege.
for those of us, I don't like when we say stuff like 25 years because it invites, like, are we supposed to get out the rabbit ears and, like, try to make sure the connection stays the way, like the signal is good. I mean, I'm gonna do that thing where I don't move my phone, but otherwise, I'm remembering of, yeah, 25 years, a lot of amazing stuff has happened, hasn't it? And I love that we're just getting started. That recent conference in for Utah was some astronomical stuff came out of visionaries. We have amazing visionaries, and it's nice to be amongst them who have been there, like you say, for 25 years. And I agree, we are just getting started. Standing on tops of giants, standing on tops of giants. Perhaps that's one of the greatest secrets to just, at a minimum, be aware of other giants we're here enjoying the benefit of. And you guys have been working for so long to establish this amazing footprint and offer a service that Utah desperately needs and the region needs, and we all need worldwide. So, even with the cybersecurity stuff with guardDog, it's always great. And one of the most common questions, it seems, in every company I'm asked is, well, why do I need anything else? And I appreciate you bringing up the partner ecosystem because great partners are a huge secret. And I know you have a great partner ecosystem, and it's one of the best secrets of, if you go it alone, you got to do it alone. If you recognize the amazing talents of people who maybe are further along in one way or another, then we can provide a complete solution that the entire ecosystem benefits from.
Yeah, perfect analogy or perfect, description, summary of the value of a network, and particularly partner networks, man. Something we've learned over recent years, and certainly, you and your team are part of that partner network, which we're glad to have you there, and be able to offer, as you mentioned, comprehensive solutions to client accounts when there's gaps, because we can't all do everything. And really, to be a good, viable business, you should focus on your wheelhouse. You should focus on what you're really good at, and then bring in partners for the stuff that your clients need that you don't do, or you don't do well. Anyways, man, so let's go back just a step, and let's kind of tell the audience a little bit about your journey. Where did you grow up? How did you end up, in startups and being an entrepreneur and a leader, and what led you to where you're at right now with guardDog? Give us kind of the 30,000-foot view of the last 35 or 40 years of your life.
Yeah,
which I know
you.
you're only 40 years and a half, so the whole thing, I guess.
I love it. Exactly. Yeah. Where to begin? I was blessed to be, I always feel like right place, right time. And you never know how that's going to serve you, because I happened to be in a place where I was born to a family that happened to be an IBM family. When IBM was an innovation company. I mean, they still are a great innovation company, but basically they were the innovation company. And so they promoted within, and that caused us to move around a lot. but also they were very, very family friendly. So I remember learning to code very, very young, learning to play with computers very, very young, and ultimately being able to ultimately start with like my first entrepreneurial venture, where I had a paper route too, but was really at a similar age. I loved the personal computer, when no one really knew what that was. It was wonderful to try to sell and position. I just thought it was really cool, but it kind of was one of these beginnings of conversations that have served me in my entrepreneur life ever since. Namely, well, I know what it does for me, but the conversation begins is, what do you want it to do for you? and and you may not know, which is some of my favorite conversations. So as I moved around a lot, I ended up, I was born in California, moved all over the place, spent a decent amount of time on the East Coast, upstate New York, ended up in Utah, and love Utah. It's got a lot of great offerings, and a great place to start a company, a great place to grow a company. Just a lot of great things in Utah, which is where Phobos really started and went from there. And it really framed what would come after too. And there's we all know, all of us entrepreneurs know that it's not all wins. It's not all successes. Some of them are lessons, and we hear that a lot, and it's maybe cliche, but it's also something really, really important. I think that it's it's comforting to know, especially after 40 something years, that this might be a lesson as opposed to the way, to say it's not deadly. It's something that helps see what we need to see to address the needs of the customer base or the market we're trying to disrupt or add to. In this case, cybersecurity. By starting about 7 years ago with the technology, and really taking an interesting approach of, when you look at network cybersecurity, that's the marriage of two relatively complex concepts. Cybersecurity happens to be something that requires a lot of knowledge, and networking knowledge, usually, especially with distributed networks and complex networks like the internet itself, it requires a lot of know-how to manage networks. When you put those together and you want to provide managed detection and response, and you want to be able to keep watch over networks in any home, in any small business, any mid-sized company, that's a really fun challenge to take on. And it's nice to know that this thing we came up with may be not the way, but something that shows us the way when we put it in front of customers. And now that we're roughly 2 years into the corporation and executing in that company, we're really pleased with the results, and still just getting started in simplifying, limiting complexity, and increasing the value. And that includes lowering the cost, the total cost of ownership of a cybersecurity solution that will keep watch over your network. Because without that, who is keeping watch over your network? Who has time to do that? Even if you are a cybersecurity professional, then do you sleep? So who's watching your network when you're not?
Yeah.
So we'd like to see every network being watched over and interacted with, and providing the safety we all deserve to have for our devices and the network itself.
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally. So I want to come back around to guardDog and the technology that you and your team are building, because really it's something that is hasn't been seen before in the market, and you've figured out some things that I think are absolutely essential to next gen cybersecurity. But let's talk a little bit more about you, right, Peter? So you mentioned that as an entrepreneur, it's not all wins, and in fact, the reality is the wins are sometimes few and far between. Sometimes it's more drudgery than anything else, right? It's a lot of hard work and pulling big sacks of rocks, metaphorically, right? Just digging in, making stuff happen. Most of the time, it's not glamorous. Most of the time, it's not like work that is necessarily super fulfilling, or is like giving you super big wins, but it's absolutely necessary, and you have to figure out and understand how to know to just how to keep yourself driven to move forward, even though sometimes it just seems like you're just kind of a cog in the works and just kind of, making things happen. The important thing is that, when you're doing that work and when you are thoughtfully and meaningfully, taking the right steps. And oftentimes those are baby steps, and sometimes those steps take days or weeks or months, right? But if you're taking the right steps, sooner or later you're going to create an outcome that makes you go, finally, finally, and so that's why for me, like, and I'm getting better at this, I'm 23 years into my entrepreneurial career. For a long time, I didn't celebrate the wins very well, right? I'm getting better at slowing down, like even small wins, going, okay, all right, that was fantastic. That took a ton of work. We've been trying to do that for months, right? Yeah, exactly. Little high five yourself, high five your team, even, do formal little, we try to do more formal little celebrations, even for smaller wins, just to kind of keep it always present in your mind that those wins are super important. They're what you're working for, right? And when you really do something impactful and important for a client or something like that, that's fulfilling. And so, you mentioned, kind of, it's not all wins, and you got to celebrate and focus in on those wins. But tell us a little bit about some of the biggest wins you've had and the biggest lessons, because I know, like, entrepreneurship is more often than wins, it's lessons. It's okay, like, that didn't work. We got blindsided right upside the head, on that one. And what do we learn from this? How do we move on? How do we iterate and fix, what happened here? So go ahead if you would.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that, and I hope it's adding to what you just described. Of I'm such a big fan of life over time, and the notion that it will make sense, ironically, in reverse. It's one thing to sit here and talk about 25 years, and you kind of touched on, I think it was your last podcast, right, about the being fully present, and I couldn't be more a fan of that. And so I'm honored to add a little bit to that, of saying, I love, it was a quote I love from a podcast from her husband, Kristen Bell, talked about there is no such thing as work-life balance. And that's not to take away from what was said, as much as she argued it's a series of micro pivots. And micro pivots being like, yeah, that I want to add to both of those and say, I think it's really important what you just said. I hope I think that's really an important message of remember the feeling of the little wins, practice winning, because when we chase a goal, which is the redundant part here, when we chase a goal, the problem is whether we get it or not really impacts us. If we chase the feeling of what that goal feels like when we achieve it, then we detach from the specifics, and we remember the feeling we're trying to achieve, that goal will help us get. So the micro pivots and the being present make more sense, even in the struggle, even when it's, well, this is perhaps a foundational moment. This is, you never know which is the one that matters later. You never know which is the one that matters, that is the way. You never know that something that you thought went completely away in the past, something that, it was, no, it didn't work out, what have you. You never know when it's going to come back, because maybe you behaved in a way that was inviting. You didn't close the door. I'm a big fan of leave the door open. Leave the door open. Don't close the door on what happened. Let it breathe. Let it be what it was. But understand, if I'm chasing the feeling, if I am pursuing the feeling, if I'm present and aware that the feeling will come, then it allows for the way in which I thought we were going to get there may not be the way we do. So in my life, yeah, it's always been interesting. A lot of my companies have involved raising investor capital, and it's really interesting because the team will be achieving amazing results, for example, but that's not necessarily what the investors see. And separating the two, and not necessarily saying, well, we're not in a place where we raised capital successfully, or evaluation, or maybe you have a down round, or economic factors that impact the team. It's really nice, again, to be like, well, you know what? Let's celebrate those little things, because in doing so, we recognize that maybe, the investor capital will come when we go a little further, when we do a few more things, when we can hear the feedback from that perspective of it's not no, it's not how you currently have it. It allows for great questions to be asked of, hey, what kind of thing? Okay, I hear you. What kind of thing should we learn from this that we can take into the next conversation? I find one of the greatest lessons in my life is people want to help. You know, it may not be the right deal, it may not be the right timing, it may not be the right whatever for them, but in the end, all of a sudden, and that's how it almost feels to me, the right timing emerges and you're ringing the NASDAQ bell. You might be ringing it for the first time, you might be ringing it for the third time. Sometimes you're with a team that you just like love, and other times, it's like a wow, we got here, and maybe it's time that we, see what happens for so many of us from here. And all of them are different. Every opportunity is different. And the path along the way, I find huge comfort in we're going through something that is not what we wanted it to be. We may think we're worth more, and we probably should. Our baby is awesome, but maybe it's not ready to be president of the United States yet. Maybe he or she, maybe there's a few more steps and a few more years, And so it's just, yeah, I appreciate all that has come before on this podcast and adding to it that, yeah, I think those micro pivots and being aware and focusing on the feeling we're chasing, those high five moments. And I really love what you just added of, yeah, the little ones count as much as the big ones, mostly so that we can focus on the feeling. So we can say, we're on the right path, we're doing the right things, and the right things will lead to good results. Maybe not the exact results I thought, maybe not the right results when I thought, but good results. So focus on the feels, focus on surrounding yourself with people who help those feels. We both have great teams. Love interacting with the next IT team. It's amazing what good people do.
Mm-hmm.
And when we build super teams and when we build super partners, it really helps us focus and makes the difference between those tough losses and those amazing victories where, yeah, it feels good to be, that the dollars are great and they always will be. But the part where we know we achieved and that feeling of we did this, we set out to do this. We didn't know it would be, selling to Sandisk for 3.2 B, we didn't know that, but it feels good. But it would have felt good if it were a third of that or whatever, because in the end, the feeling is what we were chasing. The feeling is what I would encourage anyone to chase. And when
Lots
you
of
do
wisdom
that, then yeah, then the numbers come. The numbers always come. The team will also come. The help.
What I'm hearing from you is some of the big lessons are perseverance, right? Like stick-to-itiveness, because the reality is that's what a lot of entrepreneurship takes. Sometimes it takes years to gain the traction and the momentum you're looking for. Like literally, I know it took me nearly a decade, starting a company. And yes, that first decade, there were a lot of successes and we were paying the bills. We were, by year 2 or 3, we were in the black, right? Paying the bills and taking home, a salary that was at least livable, right? But to really kind of begin to gain some traction, sometimes it takes years, and you have to know how to just like, even through the drudgery, just get up, put your nose to the grind, and make things happen. And then I love this concept you're talking about of chasing the feeling of the wins, because it's good to like have the goal, have a number out there, maybe it's revenue, maybe it's profit, maybe it's subscribers, maybe it's, whatever the number or numbers are, your KPIs and all that stuff, right? That's all good and great, but you reach those and they don't mean as much. A lot of wisdom in this advice of, chase that feeling. Remember what that win felt like, really be present in that moment. And so that, when you're in the drudgery, you can go, okay, well, we put a few more of these blocks in place, right? Persevere, get a few more of these blocks in place, and we're going to get an even bigger win this time, right? and it's going to feel great, and we're going to have such a great time as a team celebrating that, and then we're going to go build something even cooler and better and bigger and more impactful, right? So, man, some really great, some really great
I
nuggets
love
there.
I view that there's parallels, because I know, I dabble in music. You're much more of a musician. Still, I love that what
I'm a wannabe.
and music. Well, either way, we can look at. I love what music teaches in a similar fashion, right? That you pick up a guitar, which is a relatively new thing for me, and you learn the basic chords, and you can maybe strum and what have you. But it's kind of like singing in the shower or something like that. And along the way, yeah, the perseverance. It's hard to even see when you pick up a guitar. I might be playing at a venue ever. But understanding how the music makes me feel, and even more so understanding how playing with others feels whenever you have that, or conceiving of it, and chasing I just want to be able to jam with somebody or people, and then turning that into jamming with more people. And before you know it, you have stuff where, I think everybody watching can relate to. We almost like it, I think, when a musician shows their humanness, and if it kind of forgets their place or forgets their line, but they have a great, they've earned the right to their team kind of replaying the bridge, I'm back, I can sing the same lines again, only this time I'm going to remember. It's just a beautiful parallel, whether it's music or sports, because I love that chasing the field, because even when I won, and I did a number of sports growing up, there's always the next game, right? So there's that, well, I won and it felt good, and now it's time to still learn. I like to, I don't know about you guys, I don't know about everybody listening and you, Earl, but sometimes, if not a lot of times, early in a season, it was kind of nice. Meaning, now that when it makes sense backwards, it was kind of nice to get those losses, and you kind of, I want to spend time on this kind of fun first couple years, right? The part that says, yeah, there's this built in for entrepreneurs, figuring out how to get to the part, wait, I can live doing this. Well, that is like the first part always, right? The first part is, I've heard stories that I admire of people living in their car. We've all heard stories of how Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley, living out of garages. There's people who advocate, yeah, don't quit your day job while you build what your dream is. And so chasing the feels and understanding what that looks like, I like comparing it to music or sports, of saying it allows to realize the game is only over when you decide it is. And in the meantime, that looks like perseverance, because it's, well, we got that victory, but we're not done yet. The season's not over yet. So let's go get more. Let's go get another. And let's get better at what we're doing through this experience, whether we win or lose. And to a certain extent, I don't know that I'll ever get there. I love the wins. I think we all do. But to a certain extent, the wins and the losses, both of them still invite the lesson. Maybe a lesson of what to do more of, but still there are elements within that of, I can't wait to do more. I can't wait to do it again. I can't wait to improve how I work with a team. I can't wait to improve how I partner as a company. I can't wait to, learn these great lessons, improve on these lessons, and offer more to our customers and to the world around us.
Yeah, man, totally. Obviously, I'm a little partial to to music, and so that analogy definitely resonates with me. And I gotta say, like, you're absolutely right. Like, I like picking up a guitar and jamming at home, right, and practicing. But there is nothing like the feeling of being with other musicians and being in the groove together, being in the pocket, and then like being connected on a level where you start to just jam and riff off of each other, right? And like you mentioned, there might be mistakes, but you just come back around. You make the mistake look natural. And so, for me, like, that is literally one of the most rewarding moments in my life, and it's something that I do every single week with the guys that I play with, who are all tech execs and tech founders. And it's something I look forward to. We generally practice midweek, so it breaks up the monotony of the week, and it gives you a nice win, and then just that feeling of like connectedness, and really, riffing off of each other. But here's the thing, I'm saying, like, you can achieve that in business too. Like, you're not playing musical instruments, but you're playing the game of business together, and you can achieve that synchronicity of riffing off of each other and jamming per se, in business. And when you hit that, like, that's a damn good feeling, man. And that's, you got to remember it. You got to chase back after that feeling, because it's easy to lose it. It's easy for it to go away. So look, I want to come back around to guardDog, right? Tell me a little bit about where the genesis of this idea came from, and then we'll get a little more into like the specifics of the technology. But tell me about where the genesis of this all came from.
Yeah, I really appreciate invitations to remember that, as I mentioned it, the technology itself, you mentioned a couple of years getting here, the technology itself began around 7 years ago or so. And it was a friend, an investor friend who we were at my birthday. I remember it well. He takes me out to lunch every year. And he was simply making me aware of another investor friend of ours who did this wonderful thing. Many of us are working from home. Many of us are distributed workforces, and we've been mobile workforce for quite a while now. And this poor gentleman made the mistake of bringing their laptop on vacation to Mexico, getting on a Wi-Fi network and handling business from Mexico on a quote unquote public Wi-Fi, where we say things like, hey, you shouldn't do that. And yet public Wi-Fi's are everywhere for good reason. So why shouldn't you join a public Wi-Fi? Well, because you don't know who's on it, and a network with no one who protects you on it, whether it's home, small business, mid-market, or hotel, or coffee shop, or whatever else, if you don't know who's on it, then it's equally probable that there's no danger as there is danger. If you don't know, you don't know. There's metaphors galore of this, of venturing into the dark, you don't know. So when I was at lunch and they said, and the invitation came, it was for me listening really well. And Phobos being the first cybersecurity company doing SSL VPNs, they're very prolific now. And my view, our view at guardDog is, and with partners, is this will be very prolific too, because it's a strange thing to say public networks exist and yet we're not supposed to use them. It's also a strange thing to recognize that we're not supposed to use them for the very same reason that our home networks might not be very secure either. Because I don't know what my kids did when they took their mobile device somewhere else. Some friend was on there, I invited, whatever. If we don't know who's on there, then we also don't know, what's being exploited, what's exploitable. So it was born from this notion of saying, can we automate? Can we simplify? Get rid of the complexity of networks, so much so that, let's use these concept of 10-year cycles. So much so that, much like VPNs that many of us are familiar with now and just assume they're there, that when we did Phobos, they weren't. You didn't have the VPN tunnel concept. And similarly, having networks that are aware of themselves, networks that have a watchful guard dog on them, that is automated. It uses artificial intelligence to say, hey, I'm going to watch all the devices and watch for behaviors that may not be, they're questionable at best, and we're going to interrupt them to start, and then look at it, and then take action based upon that, and retrain based upon the results. And being that that's been happening for now over 7 years, we've built a good amount of automation into this. We have an understanding of what exploited behavior might look like, as well as techniques for interrupting that behavior. And we can send notifications to partners or whoever else who can then take additional actions for safety. And our hope is, our expectation is, much like the VPN that provided privacy, a secure connection from point A to point B. We can now say, I will be able to at some point join a public network and have the public network report to me how safe I am. It will be able to tell me that. And in the meantime, at my home, where I can simply deploy a guard dog, or a FIDO, as we call the device that gets deployed, and it's that simple. And with the partner being able to plug in and provide some of the, we call it, it's referred to as attack surface management. It's how many things are vulnerable to what kind of exploits. We can fix those things. Partner can fix those things. Nexus IT provides that support for a number of our customers and us. And being able to say we're a part of the answer. We are watching and automatically interrupting attempted exploits on the network towards devices that are inherently vulnerable to the networks they join. So it's a great way to remember. I really appreciate that invitation of 7 years ago where, yeah, it's interesting that it was a mistake to work from an unknown network. You know, it was a mistake to do this, and yet it's also the right call, isn't it? It's my customers would like to be able to interact with me. Yeah, you know, whether I should or shouldn't, they did on vacation. And I'm sure their customers appreciated that many times they did it before, but not when they got hacked. And it really hurt them a lot. And so being able to provide this network reconnaissance, this network awareness, the watchful care of a guard dog that is watching for you, that is also interrupting exploited behaviors, and then being able to take action based upon those exploited behaviors.
Very, very cool, man. So 7 years ago, you know, the idea kind of comes to mind. You start building some technology around it, you know, some software to kind of recognize, you know, malicious behavior, and you start building a platform. But really, it took about 5 years to launch the product, the company, to have an MVP, right?
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
So you've been 2 years kind of, you know, actually in the market per se. And so, you know, that's I think an important lesson in and of itself right there is that a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, think that the process is going to be overnight, right? And sometimes, depending upon the complexity of the process and what you're building, you know, the product, the service, the gadget, the widget, you know, whatever it is, sometimes that process takes a significant amount of time, and you got to have patience.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't mind being vulnerable and saying, I hope everybody laughs with me, because pardon me if it's a little funny and humorous for me now. We honestly thought it was a great idea. The first MVP we thought was the MVP looked like a dog head. You know, it had like the radios for the wireless happened to look like, you know, ears, and it was designed to look like a dog. We thought that was great. And we thought it was great because, hey, it's guard dog. You know, you can have your own personal guard dog. Only thing is, it doesn't deploy well at all. You know, like it doesn't fit in where the wireless routers are. You know, it's like it just we had to get it out there to get that initial feedback that said, oh, we thought it was the minimum viable product. Only thing was, no, you know, in the end, we have one antenna that does the same as the two antennas now. You know, we have a much more slim profile, and it's much more designed to fit where we want it, which is right next to your wireless router, for example, to use homes or small businesses where the deployment is simple because we took the feedback back. But I laugh at it now. It's funny because
you gave up on the branding gimmick to make it, you know, something a little more usable.
Exactly. I love that because it's ironic, right? Here we are, the branding gimmick. We totally misunderstood the branding. Oh, it's how the experience is that's going to matter a little bit more than this is a guard dog. You know, let's just deliver a box and a product that says guard dog and have it fit the needs better, deploy much faster, have the cables plug in really, really easy so anyone can do it, really. And then plug it into partner ecosystems and services that, again, are simple and easy and complete the whole picture.
Yeah, man. Cool stuff. So let's dig into the technology a little bit more, into guardDog itself. You know, you've mentioned, and I want to like, you know, focus in on this a little bit because this is what's, you know, really unique. You've mentioned that guardDog, you know, has the ability to automatically interrupt malicious behavior, or in other words, a bad actor, you know, a hacker, a cyber criminal, and maybe that's even, you know, somebody sitting in a coffee shop that's set up, you know, a rogue access point or a honeypot, you know, sitting in their backpack. Which this stuff happens. Like we literally get called into co-working spaces a couple times a year because they're like, there's something weird going on with our Wi-Fi, and like we start investigating, and there are rogue access points, you know, with people mining data and information in co-working spaces in Utah, in Salt Lake, right? So like this stuff really happens, and it doesn't just happen in some remote corner of the world that we don't, that we don't pay attention to. It happens right here in our own backyard. So let's talk a little bit about, I know guardDog has the ability to, in about 0.22 milliseconds, recognize malicious behavior and shut it down. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like you mentioned, it's some of that before it became productized. Some of the early iterations we did with software only, and we're on a laptop. And we were local. We were in Utah. We were in Salt Lake, and we were at a coffee shop with a brand name that, of course, we won't mention, but it's well used, well known. And I hate to stereotype, but we would watch as we were doing the early version of the interruptions and the stuff we're talking about here, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we would watch a little bit of a stereotype because we were already interrupting, and that will strike hackers as a little odd because they're used to going into a coffee shop, for example, and being able to sit in the corner. And to stereotype just a little bit, we would witness over and over again. I mean, this was over a day or two or three or five, it wasn't all at the same time or what have you. But nevertheless, as you say, it actually is fairly common because you can buy a Wi-Fi hacker toolkit for like $100 off the internet. Just Google Wi-Fi attack kit or hack kit, and you got it done. You don't have to know how to do it. But defending against it is something that, on the other hand, we Google that. Well, there really isn't anything except guardDog. And so we watch this time and time again. Somebody would walk into the coffee shop and they would open up their laptop in a corner, not go get a coffee, not go get anything. Something would happen on the network that was with malicious intent, an exploitive something or other to its devices. We would stop it and interrupt it. And I'm glad to say, like, the behavior was kind of interesting because you'd watch those same people shut their laptop and kind of try to exit gracefully, And I only share that as a beginning part because, it really is all around us. And we only enjoy the benefits of not knowing that because many of us aren't network aware. Many of us don't know how to look on our own network on what's on there. What does the network traffic look like? Not just the devices. There's a lot of home routers and small business stuff that'll say, here's the devices that are currently on, but not necessarily the traffic being sent. In fact, rare is that because it takes a certain expertise to interpret that traffic, hence the artificial intelligence part. So it's really exciting. It's in artificial intelligence, it's called supervised training, or at least that's what I've heard it referred to as. So I'll use that term. Basically, it's kind of like we just talked about with the coffee shop of, okay, let's teach it a little bit of how to interrupt. And it might be best understood to understand, we use non-harmful exploitive behaviors that are geared towards simply stopping exploitive behavior. So they're not like something that harms any devices or even the network itself. They're specifically designed to only interrupt. So to the user who's on the laptop, if they're not doing anything malicious intentionally, maybe their device was compromised and someone else is remotely doing an attack, they won't even notice because they don't know anything's going on. But on the other hand, if you're a hacker and you join a network protected by guardDog, and they attempt to do something, maybe it's most Windows boxes use a file sharing concept called SMB. And if you're using SMB, well, that's a file sharing. It's basically saying that even if you're locked down on the network you're on, you're only protected so much. So being able to sit on a network long enough and also allowing an attacker to do that. So if somebody's trying to send a SMB exploit, is one exploit that is common for Windows environments, then being able to send an interrupt so that you interrupt their exploitive concept, they might still be legitimately trying to log in. And if they're legitimately trying to log into a file share, then that will work. But the part where they're sending a known or even unknown but learned and adapted exploit and interrupting it makes it so the attack is not successful, but the ability to still connect to file sharing will be successful. So I have two devices, Windows box to Windows box. If I'm sharing files between them, that's normal and it won't be interrupted. But if I send a network interrupt command on these same networks that don't have the protective measures on them, then you bring that kind of protection to a network that doesn't have it. And the interruption is enough to stop the exploit from being effective, whether that's a file share or not too long ago, for about a week, Apple did a great job of patching it. All Apple devices had a known network vulnerability, and many people covered it. I think you did, I think, as a matter of fact, and what we can do about it. And some of that is know your environment and protect yourself. But if you're on a guard dog protected network and an iOS device is vulnerable, then guardDog, the FIDO device that provides that low overwatching and response, will interrupt the attempt to exploit a known iOS exploit. Therefore, it won't work.
That's so cool, man. So super cool. Theoretically, with file change behavior and stuff like that, I mean, that's exactly what ransomware does, right? It begins to execute and encrypt files. And so theoretically, if you're able to interrupt that, sure, maybe a few files get encrypted, but that's a lot easier to recover from than thousands of files across an entire network, servers and workstations, and those scenarios. And we get called in on those scenarios that if we don't bend over backwards for that entity, right? They in fact, even recently in the last year, we've been called into a few scenarios where other people in our market had responded to a to a ransomware scenario or a cyber incident, and they were 4 weeks or 6 weeks into remediation, fixing the problem, and the business is still not back up, right? And so we get called in, and we're usually able to go in, give it everything we got, and 24, 48, 72 hours have a business back up, because you can't have operations down for 4 weeks or 6 weeks because you got hit by a ransomware. So something like guardDog that can look at malicious behavior and say, well, wait a second, this doesn't belong here. We're going to interrupt that behavior. You just thwart the attempt. So it's super cool. It's super cool to watch it happen in the background too.
Absolutely, and I love that metaphor. I often compare it to the pandemic. It's what you don't see that's the problem. So, we don't do device management. That's, again, partners offer that. NextIT has numerous options for that. We're certainly advocates. You should, and there's this notion in cybersecurity called 0 day. The idea is to say, on the first day that an exploit is known, we also have an answer to it. And I view that that's an awful lot like Russian roulette a little bit. There's one bullet in the gun, so only one of us is going to die. That's great news. It's not comforting though if once you're a cybersecurity person and you're aware someone's getting shot on that first day, which in the world we live in is every day. So one of the things, to use what you described about ransomware, is if you can't stop the device from being exploited because maybe I clicked on an email that I shouldn't have or whatever else, it is nice to know that you can't use the network to spread it, though. So like you're describing, maybe every file on my laptop actually did get encrypted and ransomwared, but it stopped there. Then it didn't spread. Coming back to the SMB stuff, it didn't spread because the network, when it hit the network, guardDog interrupted it. It said, you're trying to spread something. And I like referring to it as, to date, we have referred to hackers as bad actors. I think we need to change that. I think we don't know if they're bad actors, but let's identify bad acting. Some cybersecurity professionals would say clicking on a malicious link is right in that gray area of you shouldn't do it. And I think, well, I fancy myself fairly cybersecurity, have decent cyber hygiene, but have I clicked on a link I shouldn't? Absolutely. I have. And it's nice to have these tools and partners and the whole thing. And it is of particular comfort now that I live in a guardDog environment, that I know that even if I have to go figure out how to make my machine work again, that my machine won't spread to everything else on a network, because as soon as it hits the network, guardDog can see it. Once it can see it, it can interrupt it. Once it's interrupted, it won't spread, which means, the file servers, everything that the network does, it's going to provide that protection for.
Yeah. Well, it's so easy in just a few hours really to recover a laptop that's been compromised. But if you're talking now about suddenly it's spread to, 500 users plus 25 servers, right? That's a whole different scenario. And that's where, it can take days and sometimes even weeks, to recover from those types of scenarios. So having, the value of a technology that can recognize malicious behavior and stop it in its tracks, is super, super useful, super cool. So tell us a little bit about, we got about 10 minutes left here. Tell us a little bit about the roadmap. What are you guys working on? What are some of the, the enhancements coming down the road? What's cool and new on the cybersecurity front for you and your team?
Yeah, we're really excited, and it's nice to be deploying these and being able to take the feedback, because it's one thing to say, if you are a home or a small business where maybe you have 4 access points total, then I deploy guardDog and I deploy 4 devices, and I watch what's called a security operations center kind of concept of, here's what's going on for 4 devices. That gets really chaotic if you have thousands of employees who are working from home, maybe remote offices. So being able to extend that to a distributed footprint, both using partners. So we send notifications who can fill in the gaps and offer services to lower attack surfaces and notify other threat intelligence solutions, is something that is really exciting to us. And we're coming out with that fairly soon, so that a security or just an IT department can, instead of managing onesie twosies, can set policies of, tell me what I need to see when I need to see it, notify me, let me know if the action stopped, let me know if they went away, because you can see things, for example, already, kind of like the coffee shop metaphor I mentioned, because we can watch that of, well, we interrupted an exploit and the device that was attempting it went off the network, right? Meaning they went off on their own. We didn't do it, but they just left. And so arguably, quote unquote, the threat went away. So it's really exciting to be able to extend this to say, what does this look like for a work from home where I have hundreds or 10 or whatever I have employees, and I want to manage and watch hundreds of networks, but not necessarily be accountable for everything on the network. I just want to provide, kind of like you were mentioning, we're talking about the spreading. I want to stop the spread from home to my corporate network, for example, or a small office to my main office, or to the cloud, or whatever else. So if I have all these cloud tools, but I'm able to access the cloud from anywhere else. And so if I allow for these spreadings, then we end up in this very interesting place of how we get there doesn't matter, but interrupting it is important. And being able to provide a simplified, I want to manage thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these things as an ecosystem, as a managed service provider, as a corporate IT. Maybe I have cybersecurity experience, maybe I do not, but I can rely on a partner who can now come in and provide that outsourced cybersecurity experience for the networks that never had it before. We call that edge territory, because we're really referring to this place where right now, beyond the edge, if you will, no one's watching. So all we're going to do is watch and provide simplified reporting of what's going on in that watched environment, of what's going on when we are keeping watch, when we are not keeping watch, meaning we're like, a human might not be, let's send notifications to somebody and let them know it was handled, but this is what happened last night while you were sleeping. And now what else do you want to do?
Right. So this this concept of expanding your footprint and your capabilities to a distributed workforce, to work from home, it's a total game changer. And I got to tell you, like, for cyber professionals like myself, like our team at Nexus IT, outsourced, cybersecurity partners like us, or even internal, IT departments, COVID, the pandemic, the work from home phenomenon has created literally thousands of new variables for us to deal with. And it's become a total nightmare. Like, okay, so maybe, you're a company that had 500 employees and you had corporate office and 3 branch offices, and maybe you had, like, your executive team was set up to telecommute pre-COVID, right? Or call it 20 people on the team were set up to telecommute. from wherever, pre-COVID. Suddenly, all at once you send all 500 people home, and now instead of call it 4 or 5 networks that you have to watch, right? That you have to be vigilant of, that you have to implement controls for. Now you have 500 networks, right? And those networks are all different because sometimes while, guys like me are going to say, well, best practices is you should actually send a firewall home with every single one of those employees, right? And a firewall you control and laptops that you control with the policies that you want on them and all that kind of stuff. The reality is like, that's not entirely feasible. And so suddenly, like, you have all these environments that are extremely vulnerable, that pose massive risk for you. And so, you and your team, kudos for like seeing the need in the market to say, we have to figure out a new challenge to, and I hate this term, man, the new normal. I hate using it, right?
Yeah.
Anything that has to do with like adopting laissez-faire narrative from COVID, I'm against it. But, I'm pissed off at COVID. Anyways,
as we all should be, and I love what you're saying, because that's just it. There's an IT phrase that we've all had this long career, and I don't know if you guys say it. The problem we're talking about is if I touch it, I have to manage it. So I'm excited about where this roadmap is going and what it means because of that. Because what it says is, well, what if I don't need to touch it, but I do need to get reporting based upon policy? So you actually get new visibility at your employee's home. I may be the provider of the device. Here you go. Our new policy is you have to have this. So we'll provide just the network watch for you. Maybe you already have a device, maybe you don't. But meaning a device instead of the guard dog. But being able to say, notify me if there's an attack taking place. But otherwise, I don't need to know what's going on in your network at all, because it doesn't really matter. I'm only trying to keep our corporate stuff safe. So that means there's a handshake here that says, instead of touching it and now I have to manage it, maybe I can instead compromise and say, well, I just need you to tell me automatically if you're being exploited right now, and then I can take actions based upon that, taking the thousands of variables and reducing them to a much smaller, manageable number of my home is my home, my small office is my small office. Whatever it is that isn't currently being watched, I can now create new policies that do that. So yeah, I love that challenge, and thank you for honoring our approach to it.
Yeah, no, super duper cool. And this is so important, for perhaps, the non-technical viewers, like, even in just a connected home in today's world, like the amount of devices becomes astonishing. People think, well, like, okay, there's 3 of us in the family, and mom and dad have laptops and they have their mobile phones, but the kid has a mobile phone and a tablet, and mom and dad probably have a tablet, and then you got the smart fridge, and you got the smart doorbell, and you got the smart thermostat, and you got it's never ending. And you might think that you have 5 or 6 devices on your network, but when you go look at your network and you look at like those routers that you're talking about that kind of show you everything that's connected, suddenly you realize I have 45 devices connected to this network. And by the way, like a lot of those little smart devices, they're not exactly like they're not known for really robust security. And those doorbells, those doorbell cameras get hacked and stuff. And so when that happens, like now, with the guard dog on the network, you've got some defense, to be able to say, okay, like there is suspicious activity on this network. There's something that's not right, and we're going to shut down that activity. And we're going to report back to the IT department or the outsourced provider to let them know that, hey, there's something nefarious going on here. You need to take a closer look and you need to address it, right?
Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. Super cool. Well, Peter, we're coming down to the top of the hour here, and I want to just thank you again for spending your time with me here today, for sharing your story, your lessons, and sharing more about this guard dog project, because really it's fantastic. It's cool. It's next gen. It is the evolution of cybersecurity that is absolutely necessary, in today's world, right? Any parting words, advice that you want to share before we wrap up here?
I appreciate the opportunity to wrap it together, because to me, in paying attention to the feeling we're chasing, I just love focusing on the feeling of safety, you know, wherever we go, however that looks like. Let's create a safer world. It may be why it's angering to talk about some of the, you know, takeaways and lessons learned. And I just really appreciate, and I'm excited to play our role with the cybersecurity side of let's feel safer. Let's chase feeling safer on our networks, with our devices, with our smart devices, with the people around us, and let's chase feeling safer together. And so I really am grateful for this partnership, for this time together, and for all of you for tuning in and listening. And we want to hear your feedback, of course, and participate in that. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, my friend. Look, any questions you have for myself or Peter, feel free to, reach out, look us up on LinkedIn, send us a message there. Look up Peter's new project, GuardDog. It is super cool. And any questions you have about that, let us know. Peter, my friend, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. It's dark there in the woods
Yes,
of New England, but have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you in a few weeks on the next segment of TechBeat.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Earl.
See y'all.
Cheers.